here too. Not in yet. Okay, so let's talk about the FTSE. So the FTSE's in a buy zone down here. We've got to be a little bit careful of this this daily pivot, but this looks like a target to me. It may or may not get there by the end of the day, but I quite like it. There's obviously going to be some selling around about the daily pivot, but if it breaks through this area, then it may just cause some sort of retracement and then a kind of bounce back to the upside from that point. So that could be used as a bounce point. So allow it to break to the upside, use the daily pivot and break down again. The reason the daily pivot is much more likely to provide resistance today is because of the lack of good news coming out. But the reason that I would suspect we'll probably at least retrace back to areas of breakout is because we didn't we don't have any meat on the bones really with this trade deal. All we have is that there's a chance that that it could collapse by Friday, but there is a Chinese envoy going tomorrow, and that may just leave the market a little bit sullen today, but then pushing back to the upside tomorrow as that starts to unfold. We might even get some decent rhetoric out of out of America from that. So that is a buy zone down there for the market. The trade up here didn't put me in on this account, but it put me in on the other account. So my high here was 26. That's where my my entry was, and it got to 73, 25, 75. So I was not allowed to get in by 0.25 of a pip, which I have to say is incredibly frustrating. But that's the rules of the game, and the rules of the game are you have to get over it fast. But that's not a problem because, as I say, the other one did pit me in. When we look at this on the cash was at 72 and sorry 73.73, and the high here was 73.43. So literally the best possible price, but pretty much within half a pip I could have possibly got. So the UK 100, you guys actually would have benefited because you should have been trading the UK 100 and not the futures. So you would have been all right, and you would have got you would have been able to take advantage of the move to the downside. But trade should be closed now, and the reason that trade should be closed to the downside now, doesn't matter if you get out now, you still made a handsome profit on that, is because of this line here, which is an important level along the daily chart. So actually, let's not worry about the let's not do it on the on this one, even though actually this one might be of interest as well. Let's just see where this is saying it's going to get to. Yeah, see that actually does 72.70. 72.70 is 30 pips above where we are now, which actually does lead us to another potential point of resistance, which I'll show you. Now, I'm not using this chart as my chart to read information from. So let's bring back the futures and talk about why the futures are likely to bounce here. And that's because of this level. So they do look slightly different. The futures and the cash look slightly different, but remember the other one is a combination of cash and futures, where at least this is a pure futures chart. So this is the reason I'll trust this over the other chart. So the reason that there's a bounce point there is because of that. Now, we said that there's around about a 30 pip move to the upside, which will bring this in around about 71.20 ish, which is about there. And you can see when we look along, I mean, it's not quite the high at that point, so it might be a little bit lower, 72.19. It's only a pip lower, but this area up here is the area that needs to be targeted ultimately, which is 72.80, which will give a 90 pip swing back to the upside if it can get there. And just what the market just needs right now is things just to quieten down on the trade front, and see if it can just ease its way back into that area. There will be some trials and tribulations on the way, and whether it can get to that particular point is possibly a little bit questionable, but it should it should get up there. You know, if we think about what generally happens with a breakout area being tested, then this area is the area that we'd be looking for being tested. But obviously, on the way there, on the shorter term timeframes, we do see the pivots and everything else. So there's a pivot there. The 7280 is all the way up to this point here. So this would be the breakout zone, and the point that we should really be trying to target. But it's going to be a little bit worrisome, and there's two obvious points at the minute that look like it could cause an issue. It won't be a problem. This trend line won't be an issue if it happens today. You know, if we're looking at this trend line being tested today, it won't become so much of an issue because it won't be too deeply away from that. So it's going to be around a bit within 20 pips. So we could probably lower our target a little bit to that point there, which is just around about the 7260. So maybe a 75 pip swing to the upside. The daily pivot is going to get in the way. There's no doubt about that. But there's the area of confluence. There was a belt hold bar here, which you know, it did provide some upside, but it wasn't a belt hold that held effectively. You know, it didn't come back down again and bounce at that point. It shoved its way straight back through, and this was the price action from yesterday. So as soon as we got that break to the downside, then really the cascading and waterfalling effect was always going to be in play. So we are waiting for some calm. We're looking for some calm in the markets today. Markets starting to ease back to the upside. I mean, let's see whether the way I'm reading it is correct, but the way I would read it is that with trade talks maybe resuming tomorrow and as yet being unresolved, there's probably a high chance that the market will certainly some market participants will try and get in at these lows with the chance of moving to this point and then putting stops down at these levels. So trades to the upside are on, and that's going to be the ultimate target at that point. If it takes out that level and moves to the upside, then we can put the trade back on if it takes the level out. But it's better to come out here. This point here is the problem. So we probably do need to see it come up, come back, and then probably pick it up from this point here and see if it can go up. So the market has just opened up. Let's see how it reacts in this opening 15 minutes. Probably still going to be some flushing out down here. If it takes out the lows, incidentally, let's just bring out this this point here again. On a daily. If it takes out those lows down there, then there is some genuine open water that leaves us probably down to the previous lows down here. You know, there's a couple of other trend lines along here, but I guess because I suspect the market is probably going to just put the brakes on the downside until the trade war is sorted out. I mean, the move yesterday was another emotive move, and we've seen a lot of this in the market where people are moving on speculation more than anything else. But there was a little bit, I suppose, of a little bit more meat on the bones when it came down to that speculation, because Donald Trump, to be fair, did come out and say that he was looking to slap those tariffs on in his tweet. So not that surprising that we got the move to the downside as we did, but it would be probably a little bit more surprising if we took out this this lower level. So that's why I'm plumping for the upside today, and it's just down to whether you have the appetite to move to trade this to the upside, or whether you want to wait for this level for another opportunity for the downside. But I would be looking for this really to make an attempt to get back to this level at least by the end of the week, when we have those tariffs added on Friday if the trade war isn't sorted out. So the way I would read that, I guess on a kind of fundamental level, is that the market will attempt to pare back the weakness in the weekly chart. Now, one other thing about this weekly chart, which is really interesting, is aside from the lower line here, aside from this lower line down here, which we really see on the daily, The interesting thing is, this is still in an uptrend. As vicious as this move has been, on the higher time frames, and we're looking at the longer the stronger, this is still in positive territory. And the question is, does it eventually move back to its highs and beyond? Or do we start to kind of find this as a topping area? But there's no topping pattern here on the weekly. And for this to happen, for the topping pattern to happen on the weekly, what we'd have to see, and we're going to be guessing a little bit if we try and trade this from this point right the way up. So that's why I would suggest coming out and then re-entering. What we'd have to see is this. A move back to the downside, creating a neckline along here, maybe there. And then we can start to see whether the bars do actually, bounce from that point and give us a right shoulder. Now, that would be the only time that I would be a bit more comfortable to say that that the market is probably actually reversing, and we should be looking for some longer term downside, because given all the information that we have, so it's it would start to boost up again from that point, and then probably we'd be looking at something that would then break down from there. So
good job, mate.
Yeah, that's the way I would read it, mate. I would read it that we're still in an uptrend, and the market will continue to attempt to move back into these areas, which does actually increase the probability that that we have these areas up here retested. It increases the probability. It's not anything set in stone, but it increases the probability that we have this area retested because of the uptrend on the weekly. In saying that, the daily isn't a downtrend. It was confirmed at this point that that we were in a downtrend on the daily. So they aren't in conjunction with each other. So if you are going to trade this to the upside, I would take profit. Don't expect it to burst straight through before Friday. See what happens on Friday, and then we can see if we can start to trade, back to regular patterns after that. So that's the way to play it, in my opinion, mate. Look for this as a buy zone. Try and get in down here, and see if you can hold on to it for as long as possible, which will probably be around about a 70 to 90 pip swing from here to the upside.
Nice job, mate, on the short. Let's hang and see what happens on the long end.
Yeah, so just on the short, I don't know if you heard what I said about the short, but I was trading on two different accounts, and one account trades the UK 100, and one trades the futures. Now, I suspect you probably don't remember the numbers that I put into the account, but
I remember 73.73 or something on the
right. Well, the 73.73 on the cash. The high of this bar was 73.43.43. So that just about got me in, and it got me in within half a pip of the high. This one was 72. What was it? It was 72.26. Sorry, 73.26. I don't know if you remember that. So 73.26 was on the futures. It got to 73.25.75. So that one made me sick.
Bugger.
Yeah. The other one, obviously, I was overjoyed about. I got pipped in half a pip. But it's interesting, isn't it? One of them got me in half a pip. It only went another half a pip, and it just waterfalled. And the other one didn't make it by a quarter of a pip. And didn't get me in. So that's as I say, that's the trials and tribulations, and you have to get over that stuff pretty quick. I have to say, yesterday I was really I was quite upset about it. Because of the move, because it wasn't because I didn't get in, but it was because after I saw the move, I mean, what would it end up being, like 150 or 160 pips to the downside? So you miss a move like that because a quarter of a pip, and it does make you feel a little bit ill. And it's one of those that, and this is interesting, isn't it? Because we always say you always get another chance, and to a degree, you do. I mean, it was the only problem that I then had was that I wasn't prepared to go in at a lower price because I had the higher price in my head, and that's the psychological battle that is constantly going on with the market. Is that can you sweep away the past very, very quickly. And
Wouldn't be too easy to get back in, though, would it? Really?
well, there was. Do you know what? There was probably a I don't know if you would. There was probably maybe a slingshot entry as this one broke out to the upside, but maybe an entry down the bottom there. I'm not sure if you would have traded that or not, but there were other opportunities. But by that time, that was 23 pips away from my entry, and I thought that I thought I'd missed my opportunity, and I've missed the high, so that's now become a bit more expensive. But from that point down to that point, it doesn't look very expensive anymore.
Ain't it? That's a fact.
Yeah,
mate. I've got to say I'm a bit stunned, and I just don't know what's going on. I can't get a read on it, to be fair. And I'm talking really about the Kiwi. The Kiwi's got me completely bamboozled. We've had an interest rate cut, yet the net result of that interest rate cut right now is zero. The market hasn't moved a millimetre.
Well, I saw that. I saw that. What are you looking at? The Kiwi dollar?
Beg your pardon?
Kiwi dollar?
Oh, at the moment I am, yeah.
Because I looked at the Aussie Kiwi because we discussed that one yesterday. And what was interesting is, yes, we've got this retracement, but does that not give traders an opportunity to get in? Because I would suggest that with that,
I believe so, yes.
That announcement, is fairly substantially bearish, and that would suggest that this is a buy zone now.
One would think so, but why is it come off so fast? Doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Let's have a look at the levels. I mean, that's a daily chart, so there's a high up there. There's a weekly chart there. I mean, maybe it's just a case of orders, As you say, it might have caught the market on the hop enough to have not removed orders, and those orders might have just been triggered in to move it back to the downside. But as the dust settles, maybe people are just waiting for that price before they attempt to get back in again. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, if anything is the driver for a currency, it's interest rates and interest rate cuts. They on the whole would move a market to the downside, and we have seen it move to the downside. But yeah, the question is why the hold, and I would just see it as a buying opportunity, even though it does seem a little bit perverse in a way that this is happening, and maybe a little bit concerning. Like there's something else out there that we're just not aware of. But I guess you just have to. You trade what you see, don't you? And you trade what you assume to be the case, and that might.
Yeah, look, I've lost confidence. To be fair, I definitely see it as a buying opportunity, but I'm not sure I've got the kahunas to actually trade against that momentum now. It's kind of weird. I'd like to see a little bit more from probably London to see what the market's actually reading of this. And my read on it is confusion.
Yeah, it is strange, isn't it? You'd think that there'd be a flurry of activity around this one, but similar as we were talking about the yen yesterday. When we were discussing the yen yesterday, all was kind of calm on the Western Front, and then all of a sudden, I mean that's the so far the weekly bar on the pound yen. But this is yesterday's move from the point here. It actually opened slightly positive, and then from that point, almost I guess 180 pip gain in some respects from the highs. So maybe it's the calm before the storm, and that's why I would probably read it that way, because the same thing was discussed yesterday. Why isn't the yen buying up? The other one that was really interesting yesterday was gold. I mean, we called gold at 1278 on the show on Monday, and gold did come to 1278, which is down about there, and it bounced away from that point, and so far it hasn't looked back. If you manage to get in at that particular price, you had 100 to the down, so you're probably getting close to a break even if you had your stops at this low down here. Wouldn't have to necessarily be in the case if you traded this a little bit tighter and with an intraday chart. Then Maybe you would have got in somewhere around here with a stop at the lows, but yeah, you're still looking at a break-even trade. I would suggest with gold. I think going down to a 15 would be a little bit tricky, but maybe that's what's going on, mate. Maybe we're just waiting for is the calm before the storm with the Kiwi, rather than reading anything else into it. The only other potential thing out of this, I suppose, is that trade wars are looming, and maybe the trade wars we're in amongst it, and maybe people are waiting for that to clear out the way before they get in. Because if we don't get into the Kiwi here, we certainly have to put it on a watch list to wait until things start to clear up, because then the lack of an interest rate rise and an actual cut will surely filter through at some point.
You would think so, mate. I've got my eye firmly on it. There's no question. But at the moment, I want to find some resistance. I think I just want to get some sort of equilibrium so that I can get a read on this. At the moment, the read is very unclear for me, and
Yeah.
I find that very frustrating. So I'm going to keep my eye on it, but I'll move away from it for now and talk about something far more predictable, which is, of course, the euro. Let's have a look, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Now, having said that, we are bang smack in the middle of where we need to be, and we need to be here or here. That's the 4-hour chart I'm looking at, of course. And again, getting a read on the direction here is a little bit tough. The one thing I suppose that is in our favor is that we have approached the monthly pivot. So we do have levels to trade in conjunction with. So we've got confluence areas if we can find trade lines in here, and they're only going to come on the 30-minute charts, unfortunately, because I see absolutely no directional indicators here that are telling me something other than double bottom, higher low, another higher low, but we're hitting resistance. So if this resistance level, which is the monthly pivot, goes, then I turn into a bull. But at the moment, very, very tough to just jump in there long. So let's take a look at the 30-minute charts. And you see what I mean. We're very, very close to the monthly pivot here. You can see the pivots are very, very close together, indicating that this cross has gone or going deeper into consolidation. But where is that consolidation? Can I put a ring around it is the big thing. If I can put a ring around it, then I can trade it. But the ring doesn't seem to be terribly clear here. Perhaps I've got equal lows there. Perhaps I've got equal highs here. But it is a bit messy. I'll put a ring around it and see what it looks like. When I say a ring, that's a inaccurate description. It's actually a rectangle. So you've got a couple of lows there. I'll probably go with that, but we're really not getting a nice flow here. That's starting to look a little bit better, but I'd like to see price up here before I thought about a short. But the issue I've got, of course, if I'm willing to trade short here, is I'm trading straight into support with the pivots. So it's a bit of an ugly chart, I think, the euro at the moment, and I'm in the hold position. I think I'd just like to wait on this one for a while. I've kind of been calling it long with a little bit of trepidation around that, and that's why, we're not really seeing too much price action here. The market's pretty confused here and doesn't really know which way to go. That said, the bigger picture is giving me a potential bounce off the bottom of this channel, which is this area here that I've had on my chart since, well, not since July 2017, but that's where it started to form, this particular, which was at the time we were trying to depict a head and shoulders, but it got too long in the tooth. But it's continued to find that level and bounce off it, which is quite interesting. Right now, of course, we are teeter-tottering on a precipice. And if the euro is to get below this level, look out. It'll fall like a rock. In fact, I'm not going to say I want that to happen, because I see something completely different here. I see 3 false breaks of the bottom of this rectangle, which is an indicator to me that this will actually fly to the top of the range. Now, getting that timing right is absolutely crucial, of course, and that's the trick that I'm waiting to find here right now. That's why I'm a little bit bullish. This is a signal to me that price will break to the high side of this rectangle, and very, very quickly. So that is when it starts. It's certainly not happening quickly at the moment. So I'm looking for a long, but I want to see this level go. I want to see this monthly pivot go, or find an entry down here somewhere so I don't have to trade into the monthly pivot without banking. So that's my my quest. And if I go back to the 4-hour chart, this is my issue. I can't enter the market here because of the monthly pivot dead ahead. So I've got to get price back down here, or I've got to allow it to break the monthly pivot and come back and retest it. That's the only way I can get long, which is my want, of course. So it's a waiting game. Either we pull back down here to the daily pivot and look for a 30-minute trade, which is probably the best case scenario for me, or we wait for this to break and be retested. That is the euro. Cable. Had a good look at this morning and thought, okay, well, I've got a dromedary sitting here. I've got a double hump camel, and we've got a break of a trend line. We've got consolidation. We've got a bounce off it. Now we've got a break of it and a retest of it. But the issue I had this morning was this little bar here, had I chosen to trade it, or this bar here rather, the retest bar gives me a risk of, I have to put my entry, well, probably there, best case scenario, but I have to put my stop loss up here above the pivots. So I'll be looking at about a 40 pip risk, and the immediate support of monthly pivot is only 17 pips away. So I decided that wasn't a good reward to risk trade, though it looks as though it's intent on going there. I think I can find a better entry than that if I just choose to wait a little bit longer. Am I committed to the downside? Of course, is another question. If you look at this scenario here on the daily chart, I've got exactly the same scenario, except it's not a double hump. It's a single hump, therefore a Bactrian, for those of you who are interested in camels. And I'm now looking for the current daily bar, so today's bar, to actually breach the monthly pivot, and then tomorrow give me a bullish bar back to the trade line, or trend, I'll call it a trade line, and then I can look to trade it short. So that's why I'm in the patient seat, if you like. I think that's looking really good for a false break on a daily chart. Now, if I were to get a false break on a daily chart, that's going to give me a lot of energy coming back through here. And certainly I can't imagine we won't get to this trend line if we do get some more price action to the south. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'd like to have maybe a close around this level today, around about 130.20 mark, and then tomorrow a retest of this trend line around about a 37 pip risk gets us to about 130 pips of reward before we even have to take profit. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking at on cable. Now, lots can happen in the meantime, including trade wars, including, I believe, and I read this morning, Ash, you might like to comment on this as well, that some of Theresa May's, in fact, her deputy, as high up as her deputy, has given her till noon today, as I understand it, which is now, 3.5 hours away, to come up with an answer or tender her resignation. Is this accurate, or is this rumor?
Yeah, this is accurate, mate. She's waiting on some decisions from some backbenchers. I don't think it's in her hands as far as I'm aware. I think this is actually a decision that is going to be made by backbench Tories. She awaits verdict on Tory rebel bid to oust her, is what it says. She's suffered a double Brexit blow as she prepares for Tory backbenchers to deliver their verdict on whether she should remain in number 10. Grassroots party revolt was threatened next month if she does not set out specifics on when she will stand down. So yeah, you're right on that. The pressure on her position could continue to mount after it was announced on Tuesday that she failed to avoid the European elections. So yeah, it's just mounting up. And this is really what I was saying on Monday, that the first chat I had with Paul was that he was saying, "Oh, you must be kind of relieved that you know the Brexit deal will be almost done, because that she's in talks with Labour, but they haven't gone particularly well." You know, I said at the time that there's a huge lack of trust between the two parties, particularly from the Labour side. So there was even call yesterday that she would probably pass the second referendum, because there would be the chance that if her deal doesn't go through, that's really the only option. And I suspect it probably will end up being the only option, you know, to have that second referendum. But they are dragging their heels on it, and it is an ugly situation right now, and maybe there's just too many moving parts, and that's why nobody is actually seeing any clarity, because it's, in a way, I think from the outside, it all appears kind of simple. You know, just call the second referendum, and they were talking about on the ballot paper saying leave with a deal, leave with no deal, remain. So there's three options there for people to vote on. But I don't understand why they're taking so long over that. I mean, that just seems so obvious when there's been an impasse in Parliament for so long. It seems like the obvious way out is to put it back to the people, and probably the likelihood is that they will vote to remain, and then we can forget about this whole stupid idea in the first place, and get back to running the country properly. But
yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I mean, it will be incredibly frustrating, I think, for a lot of people if that ends up being the outcome, because we would have wasted the best part of 3 years while the global economy was growing, while we were just really just scraping around for what scraps we could have, because no new business investment, or very, very little business investment, has come into the country because of the uncertainty. So I think there's going to be probably a lot of anger if we end up at that particular point. There'll be anger from the Leave side, because they probably will lose the vote, and there'll be anger from the Remain side, because they'll think, well, what was the point of the last 2 years if this is where we're going to end up anyway.
Yeah, the one thing I didn't hear in that thing you just read was the deadline of noon today. So maybe that's not as much pressure as I was reading this morning.
Well, it is something, that there is something today, mate. Yes, I think she finds out today, so it may well be noon.
Okay.
There wasn't that written in that particular story, but who was this written by? I mean, it's the Evening Standard, so it's reputable. I'm not sure. I didn't read on anyway. The Treasury 1922 committee to Geoffrey Clinton Brown said he would back Grassroots bid to force May out with no confidence vote next month if she did not go off her own volition. Let's see if there's a time. Not that I can see here. There's no time that's been announced, but it would be it is today, so there's every chance that it is midday, and maybe they just haven't put that particular detail in.
It's entirely possible that as of midday today, this is a question, not a statement, that we will have a resigned Prime Minister.
No, what's the likelihood is that we will have either a Prime Minister which gives a timeline of when she is due to leave, or there is a movement being put in place to oust her by midday today. So if she doesn't announce when she's due to leave, then there will be a movement of how to get rid of her.
Okay, so they can't just have a vote in
No.
Parliament today and she's gone, right? Okay.
No, and the interesting thing really with this is that to a degree she's kind of safe. The only thing, the only way they can get rid of her now is the grassroots, because they've already had the MPs vote on a no confidence bill for, have a vote of no confidence on her, and she survived it. And because she survived it, she survives up until at least October. And I think she thought she was fairly safe, but it really does just go to show that the lack of popularity that she commands, because they are now just trying any possible way they can to get rid of her, right down to the grassroots. And the other really interesting thing is that, why are the opposition not taking advantage of this? Because in any other normal scenario, the opposition would be all over it and doing pretty well out of this. But they're not, and the reason that they're not is because they are in terrible trouble themselves, and mainly because of Brexit. They can't decide the best way forward, and that is putting the whole thing under a lot of pressure.
Yes, they've got to be very careful what they wish for. That's a fact. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so no real drama here in terms of trading the pound today, expecting Theresa May exit.
Oh no. There won't be an exit. No, I mean I don't know if there could be a fluctuation on the fact that the no confidence kind of puts further concern with British Parliament in play. So that might happen, but no, there's no there's nothing that would be immediate from today from the pound, I would suggest.
Okay, I guess it is another cloud on the horizon, though, and
Oh yeah.
as we all know, when it's cloudy overhead, the market's not a happy camper, and maybe the pound just gets punished again.
Yeah,
Where
and it's
it was looking very promising.
it's
Certainly on Friday.
interesting, isn't it? Because when we were talking yesterday about Donald Trump, and you were saying how entertaining he's been, in some respects, Brexit has provided similar volatility, and yet it hasn't been entertaining, and it's been quite the opposite. It's been incredibly frustrating, and a pretty hideous time to try and to pick any kind of direction with the pound with any kind of confidence. With Donald Trump, it does seem to be a lot more binary. With Brexit, there's just so many different twists, turns, and connotations that something can come out and you read it one way, but actually there's something going on in the background where somebody else is being stabbed in the back. I mean, it's all very Shakespearean.
All right, I'll treat it as a technical setup, and if I do get that, as I say, today we get a close below the monthly, and tomorrow we get a retest, I'll be a pound bear. Until that time, can I trade it long? Look, I can totally see this target here, which is 132. That's kind of interesting, and I wouldn't mind being able to trade it to there. So I'll have a little look at that. Yeah, nothing until the monthly pivot test, I don't think, from me, not in a long direction anyway. So, yeah, I'll just be leaving that one alone, I do believe. Now, the Aussie, interesting Aussie. Why is it so interesting? Well, again, because of the interest rate non-cut yesterday, one would anticipate, pardon me,
Would you say that
that
would
the
have
Aussie,
any kind of knock-on effect with the Aussie against the other currencies?
sorry, did I say?
No, would you say that? Would you say that the lack of movement with the Kiwi could have a knock-on effect? Sorry, the lower interest rates on the Kiwi. Have they kind of blinked first, and maybe we start to see a cascade of interest rate cuts, across the board, and the next in line being potentially Australia?
Yeah, look, it wouldn't surprise me. But one thing I suppose we have to take into consideration is that the Kiwi went, when was it? I can't remember now, when the Kiwi raised interest rates. It must be 18 months ago or 12 months ago. Not sure. I have to have a look. And they drifted away from the Aussie. So the differential interest rates was in favour of the Kiwi. Now, the interesting part now is that the Kiwis come back to the Aussie. And in terms of trading Aussie Kiwi, I've got to be an Aussie Kiwi bull now. I can't see any other way in the medium term that won't be the case. Look, I said this, I don't know, all week, or I don't even, I think I said it last week. I believe the reason that the RBA didn't cut interest rates rather, was simply because in 10 days' time, we've got a federal election.
Right.
And it's a really crook look to be fiddling with interest rates when that's happening, because all sorts of, political pressure and all that sort of nonsense that conspiracy theorists would go on with raises its ugly head. It's just not a good look. And I think it's been done 3 times in the past. And the government on all occasions got rolled at that point. Now, whether that's just coincidental or whatever it is, I think that was the tipping point for me when I was saying that I didn't think they would raise interest rates. And that's right, wrong, or indifferent for the reason they certainly haven't done that. Which leads me to the point that almost certainly, from my point of view, the RBA will cut interest rates next month. Now, what can turn that around, of course, is some incredible data. I don't know what's to be released prior to that, but I can't see it happening, to be fair, because the economy is just not moving at a pace to warrant the printing of good numbers at this point in time. So I'd be pretty amazed if in next month's statement or next month's RBA meeting we don't get an interest rate cut. So I think the market, to a certain degree, will be thinking that way as well. So it kind of tempers the Aussie Kiwi long, but you still got to come back to the fact that the Kiwis come back to I'll say parity in terms of interest rates with the Aussie, and for 1 month at least, I believe the Aussie is better value than the Kiwi. So I've got to be bullish Aussie Kiwi for that reason.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
It just kind of is logical to me. So, any dip here that gives us an opportunity to get in, I think is worth taking.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I mean, is it not that, getting near that level anyway because of that trend line down there?
Yeah, look, it is. One issue is, of course, the untested daily pivot. But that said, when there is a fundamental disturbance, if you like, it tends to temper the numbers against the daily pivot being tested. So I would definitely be prepared to trade this long if I get a signal. That there's no question. And the best case scenario here for me would be, without question, again, break, hit the daily pivot. In fact, I don't think I'd even wait for a re-entry above the trend line. I think I'd just trade that there on a reversal bar. So that would be the best case scenario. Second best case scenario is do exactly the same thing, then come back above here and retest it and get my entry up here. And again, I'd be willing to take that. Unless there's something I'm not seeing, that is probably the best ticket in town right now for me is Aussie Kiwi long. Just waiting for an opportunity to get in.
Yeah.
Kiwi yen short is probably not too far away. And again, simply it's the same thing upside down, really, at the end of the day. This is why I'm confused. I mean, this can't be this easy. It just cannot be this easy.
Yeah. Let's have another look at that. I wonder whether
I'll still trade it, but it just can't be this easy.
I mean, you think that there has to be a bounce at this point. Let's have another look at this.
I mean, if I get a reversal bar here, same story. How can I not trade this short? I'd have to trade this short. But Aussie Kiwi's the prime one. That's the one I'm really looking for.
Long time of the day left to go. But if this turns into another reversal bar up at the highs, that's going to look really negative, isn't it?
What are you looking at, mate?
The Aussie Kiwi on the daily.
Okay.
You know how the current days bars forming. There's so long to go in this that it probably won't end up. Well, there's no way it's going to end up looking like that. But if this does continue to move to the downside, then that's you know, and close like that, that's going to look really really bearish. Certainly for a day or so.
It certainly is. Yep. No question.
Yeah,
but
peculiar, mate. Peculiar.
That's a pretty cool time to go long.
What are people waiting for? Is there nothing else that's I suppose the only other thing is that if anybody's going to get affected by a China trade war, it's going to be Australia, and that means that the Aussie dollar, the Aussie dollar itself, will be affected. And does that maybe come into play here a little bit? The other aspect of this is that with the trade war dispute not being complete, you would still suspect that the market will probably have a bit of an exhalation of air. Of breath on that, so it would still suggest that the Aussie would probably hold on to its position, and trading it long against the Kiwi would be still a favoured move in my opinion.
Look, I can't see anything else from a fundamental point of view. Yesterday not only did we have a non-interest rate cut on the Aussie, we also had a good trade balance number, and we also had a good retail sales number.
Yeah.
So, how, why, what the hell am I not seeing that the Aussie's not taking off against Kiwi right now?
Do you know what? It could purely be technical. Because it's come a long way from its lows, and it did hit a weekly area of resistance, and it could be just that people got a little bit nervous. I'm surprised it didn't burst through those levels, but maybe with a second chance of asking, it probably will. And I like it when that kind of thing happens, and I think it's indicative. If this does end up taking off, I think it is just proof that actually waiting for the news is absolutely fine, and you don't have to guess what the outcome of news is going to be. You can just trade it after, because there's usually still an opportunity.
Oh, speaking of which, yesterday's, or I can't remember when I closed this. Oh, it was yesterday. I think you've already got that news that I closed the Aussie US dollar short, which I traded on the news yesterday. So yeah, I don't need to go back through that. That's all good.
Have we done pound euro? That's the other one that you seem to have quite a lot of success of recently.
And still waiting. I think this is priming itself up for another entry, and can't wait, to be fair. As you say, it's kind of my favorite pair right now. Are you seeing my screen?
Seeing your screen, yes.
Yes, you are. Okay. So this one, again, is fairly clear to me what I need to do, and I need to wait for this trend line to be tested again. Now, what, again, an ideal scenario, in an ideal world, which we seldom see, we get a break of the trend line. We get consolidation, maybe at this level. So up to here, consolidate here, back underneath, retest the confluence. Yippee! That's my next trade on euro pound. I think a lot can happen, of course, including the Theresa May story, including trade wars, including Trump, including all sorts of different scenarios. But I'd be prepared to wait again. We waited for quite a while to get this second entry, and if we can just wait a little bit longer, I think, and get this third entry, then we can be off to the races again. In terms of where, well, here we are, right here. If this level goes, which is probably the strongest level that we've been at, to be fair, it's 84.18, but there's a fair bit of room down to there, mind you. If we can find an entry up here at around about 85.70, we can trade this down to 84.18. There's 150 pips available there. That would be, another nice little bit of icing on the cake. but it's got to get through this level here, which is nowhere near as strong as this one. This is only the bottom of the recent range. This level here, as you can see, probably a little bit lower, maybe. It's in there somewhere. Let's call it 84, shall we? We'll move it down to 84. It's kind of in there, isn't it, really, that level? So that's the level I've got in my head. And an entry up here to there wouldn't be so bad. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Just waiting and more than happy to do so. Again, there's another option, of course. We could wait even a little bit longer if we don't get the signal and look for exactly the same here as if we hit the top of the range. Same thing underneath here. We even get a better price. That'll be happy days still. So you might get, 86.5 down to 84. I'd be okay with that too. So that's pretty clear to me what I need to do. I've no need to trade that back up. We got a pretty good exit on that, so we're milking that for all it's worth at the moment, and more than happy to do so.
It did look like a bounce point, didn't it? It looked like a bounce point. It looked like a bounce point on that euro pound.
Yeah, look, as I said in the Telegram group, it was Saturday morning. The market was about to close. The market had just fallen. Let me see, on that day, thanks to NFP, had just fallen another 75 pips, and we were at hard support. That support was very clear. And, to trade through that would have been probably a pretty poor decision.
Yeah.
So we chose, obviously, not to do that, and got a great exit.
I quite like, I like the same line that you've got. Actually, you drew that on the daily, didn't you? I think back up to 86, 0.8655 ish, maybe 86.50 ish. That kind of area looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, somewhere. One here, there's one here, and there's one right up the top. So yeah, whatever happens here, and we get a signal that's wrong, I think if we're prepared to have a pretty loose stop, we should be okay.
Yeah,
and if not, just we can ramp it up when we get to the higher levels. So yeah, more than happy with that. I should look at some 30-minute candles, shouldn't I? And I haven't spoken about pound yen yet either. Pound yen is pretty interesting and surprising, but it does show, I believe it does show, certainly if this where we are now breaks, because you can see how strong that level's been through here as support in many occasions, and here hasn't been able to break through that level again. We're having a good crack at that now. I'd be very keen to see if we do and get a retest, because there's a fair lump of profit to be had underneath that, I think, if it does break. I'm not convinced it has. We'll have to wait and see, of course. If we get the retest, then maybe that's a good signal. But if we come back inside, then obviously that's a signal in the opposite direction. And we'd be able to trade that, because false breaks are pretty cool to play out of the bottom of rectangles and triangles. Pardon me. But from here, I certainly can't trade it. But I'm going to have a quick look at the 30-minute candles to see if there's anything exciting going on. Euro Aussie is at a very interesting level. You can see it's been pounding rather the daily pivot for most of the day. Got up on, interestingly, that would have been about the Kiwi news, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that would have been the Kiwi news. Actually, a lot of currency pairs moved on that Kiwi pair news, Kiwi news, and I thought, why is this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the other thing about this, isn't it? If there's an anomaly in the market, you just sort of go, well, maybe it's best to stay out.
Well, I did stay out, but I know a lot of the boys would have been in the Kiwi short and have been in the Kiwi short, and they would have been jumping up and down with joy, I would have thought, after about 5 minutes of the announcement. But unless they've taken profit, then they're back where they started at the end of the day, which is a little bit sad. This one's a big signal. You know, that's a big candle right there. That's telling me, just as we've been pontificating on why the Aussie has retraced and it now looks bearish, same could be said here. You know, this is a big bearish candle right now. It's an emotive move, yes. And the market's gone straight back into its shell, exactly the same as it's doing on the other pairs. So I think the market's a little bit confused, as I am, and doesn't really know how to handle this. It's kind of weird. So, you know, if you see a bar like that, and you open your chart and see a bar like that, you think, well, my goodness, this is going south in a hurry. But it ain't. And, oh, gee whiz, it makes it tough to trade. But what I would say is this little trade line's getting plenty of work, and we are at a confluence area. So any signal here that this is going to go is probably worth having a look at. But the signal I've got is for a long here on a 6 pip candle. That makes it tough for me to trade because I'm not a 6 pip candle trader. I like to see something a little bigger than that. There's plenty of shots over the bow here telling me this is about to go long, to be fair. There's one there. There's one there. There's kind of one there as well. Wow. And now this doji throwing confusion into everything. That one's a bit better, but it's not a great bar. Whew. Gee, I'd like to get down here, Ash. I reckon this is going to break to the high side.
Yeah.
And I can't
the Euro
figure out why. Yeah.
It's difficult, the Euro, because, well, we just had some... the euro is just just a strange currency, isn't it? The numbers are pretty poor out of the euro, and yet it hangs on. It's not so much that it rallies significantly, but it just hangs on, and it's almost like people are waiting for numbers to turn around just so they can just flurry into it. God, if numbers start to become good in the euro, it would be a pretty expensive currency. I would suggest from that.
With my bullish outlook on the daily chart, you know, I see this here. I see the euro up here at nearly 116, in the 115s for sure. But I don't want to trade a 5 pip candle trying to get there. I mean, I'd like the reward. The reward would be pretty cool. If I could trade a 5 pip candle here and get 380 out of it, that'd be okay. But the risk is very, very high, of course, and therefore the reward is. Look, I'm not. Oh wow, this is interesting. The Euro Aussie is giving me a big signal that it's about to go. Yet it's really tough to trade. And if this candle was standing alone and we hadn't seen this bar yet, I would have a long in place here now. But because this has been willing to go down here and not find support, it's giving me the heebie-jeebies. I'm going to have to wait. Maybe I get a break and a retest, and that gets me in later. Maybe I'll have to wait for that. But yeah, watch for that one. I think that's got strong potential for the upside. Euro Aussie. More 30-minute charts. Aussie yen. You didn't get into that in the end of the day, did you? The short we were.
No, it just. I mean, it is still. It's still going to be the trade of the month, you know, with this one, and I think with a bit of upside, then there's probably going to be the opportunity. But it actually started to move in April, which was a little bit problematic actually for the statistical evidence of the yen being the strongest currency in May and the Aussie being the weakest. It's certainly the pair that is the one to trade, but as I say, that the difficulty is it moved just a shade too early, and now it needs probably some fairly decent upside. I don't know where it goes to, but it needs some fairly decent upside to get this one again. Could have traded it again yesterday, I suppose. But being in the FTSE, there's no point.
Yeah, a bit tough, really, off that bar without going to there. Although it went to the trend line, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly I like the Aussie yen actually because of the relationship it appears to have with the market. And yesterday was even more prevalent, and it is interesting, isn't it? Because if the news is about China, then we should be really focusing on Australia, and if the news is about China and negativity towards world trade, then obviously you're going to move towards the yen as the safe haven. So I do like this. I also do find it fairly interesting that the Aussie didn't suffer significantly in comparison to other currencies against the yen.
Well, that's what I was saying ahead of the show. It was holding, and you can see that here in the last 4 4-hour candles. Yet, if you look at where's another yen pair, pound yen on the 4-hour candles, it's just down, 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 down.
Yeah.
And same with New Zealand yen, you can understand. But there's that fight back again on the Kiwi. What is going on? It is just crazy. And dollar yen, same. Bang, bang, bang. That's the daily chart. Oh, actually, that's coming back, isn't it?
As I say, mate, it might be one of those days, one of those days that you just have to sit back because of the lack of opportunity. But with what appears to be sensible, if you like, or obvious.
Yeah, look, if I look at that chart, this is Aussie yen, Euro Aussie again, and I'm calling it long. I've got no right to trade in here, none at all. That's just noise. It's absolute noise. So yeah, I'd much prefer to see this break to the short side, then get back above here and retest. That'd be cool. But I can see a break coming at some stage. Well, you don't have to be Einstein to see that, but yeah, I think it's going to be long. So I'm a little bit on the hold side today.
Yeah,
I'd have to say.
Yeah,
because I'm confused.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair enough, mate, and it might be a day to take off. FTSE is continuing to just ease its way through the resistance point on these shorter term time frames. So it's got a daily pivot coming up fairly soon, which I suspect will probably provide some resistance. I don't know how significant that will be, but as I said, the way that we really need to be looking at this is a buy zone, and just with a higher low, which looks like we got high here and a higher high, then I think this is going to get some people interested. So moving up to the daily pivot and retracing is the area to try and buy from. So where we are now, we're just waiting for this to break out, close above. Move up to the pivot and come back. There is a monthly spot around about 72.20, which is just beneath the pivot, which might provide a little bit of resistance before we get there. But I would certainly let it touch the pivot before looking at the long, because this is still, this isn't a downtrend. It's just it's in a buy zone. That's the key aspect here, and it's going to be down to the stomach that people have got. Do they want to trade this long and try and trade it to the upside, or are you more keen to see if it will go long and see if you can get some shorts in the market? And if that's the case, then you really want to be waiting for this trend line along here, which is depending on when it gets there, but it's fairly close to these points here and maybe the belt hold line as well. So 60 pips above where we are now. 70 or 80 pips above where we are now is the absolute price, but that does mean breaking this out. So a little bit of waiting, but say it's a buy zone, and it's just whether people have got the stomach to trade it to the upside. But it's a decent buy zone. I think that's the key aspect here. So you're just waiting for a higher low and a higher high and retracement.
I actually think we're still on my chart, mate.
Oh, sorry, mate.
I just noticed that. Okay,
let's come back to it here. Yeah, so this is what we got going on. The FTSE is attempting to take out this level here. If we look on a shorter term time frame, on the 15-minute chart. It's just a level along here, which we tipped above, but we haven't managed to kind of get any any momentum to follow it through. But it looks pretty good, and it looks pretty good to this point, or up to the trend line there. I mean, the trend line is the obvious place to go short, and because of that, it would suggest to me that that's the obvious place to take off the long. The pivot's kind of, it's in its own area, and this is the interesting thing about pivots, is that they, to my mind anyway, I don't use them as a hard level. They're more of a confluence area. If there is an area above or below the pivot which is generated by price, then I'm much keener to look at that rather than the pivot itself. But it will potentially provide something of a resistance point to retrace back down to the possible breakout zone here. So the daily pivot needs to be touched. It needs to come back down here. Then we're looking for a long into this area. Now, if that's going to be 40 pips. Probably going to need stops under this level, which is going to be a little bit tight and dangerous possibly. But you can't put it under there because you're looking at an even money trade, which does suggest that waiting for that for the shorts might be the sensible option. But this market certainly looks like it will attempt to push certainly into here. And possibly into here, but let's see how it unfolds, mate. As I say, I don't think the trade war at this particular point is so damned that this market will sell off through the significant levels, and there's a chance that some of the speculative traders will probably try and get in here as it's been cheaper and an area that people have been waiting for. To be fair, me included. So to speculate on some upside here, I think would be kind of wise. You know, it's as long as you can get things tightened up. That's what we're looking at. This is a daily chart, so that does look kind of wise to use this as a potential bounce point.
Certainly looks to be that. I'm going to leave you with this. Look for something that will get you into Aussie Kiwi long, and by that I don't mean just guess. Have a reason to trade it. So that might be any setup that suits you, but that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a reason to get long Aussie Kiwi, or a reason to get short Kiwi dollar. So anything that looks like a setup for me, I'll be jumping on that in either of those pairs, if not both.
Great stuff, mate.
But that's it for me.
Yeah, me too, mate. Me too. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same trade channel. Let's see how this unfolds. I think probably get a little bit of a relief rally at least. It may be that the market's a little bit on hold for us if we don't get this long on the table. The market might be a little bit of a struggle here, but if we can get the long on, then I think it might be something to hold on to at least before Friday. Move stops to break even if possible, and then see if they get some sort of resolution. Certainly, the trade dispute would not be good for America either. So I think there's probably enough people out there, enough participants out there that would be fairly keen to call the market moving higher and not be too concerned until the actual deal is damned completely. So I think we're okay to look for the long up into Friday, but let's see what happens for tomorrow.
Happy days. See you all later.
All right, buddy. See you soon, buddy. Have a good evening as well.
Cheers, mate. You too.